And good evening once again, everybody. Welcome to another Hoops HD preseason podcast. We have gone through 9 conferences already in these preseason podcasts, and we're going to hit all 23 others tonight. Welcome to our Under the Radar preseason preview. Let me start by introducing the cast here, beginning with myself. My name is Chad Sherwood, streaming to you here from Atlantic Sun Territory in New Jersey, home of the NJIT Highlanders. Joining us, first of all, coming to us from MEAC country, John Titel. John, how are you doing there at Howard University's backyard?
Good, go Bison. It's always better to be under the radar than over the radar, I always say.
Also coming to us from Colonial Athletic Association territory, Joby Fortson. Joby, how you doing?
Doing well. It's still football season in the Colonial. They'll probably get quite a few in the SFCS playoffs this year.
Air traffic controller, Joby.
And finally, coming to us from somewhere in the continental United States, also known as WAC territory, David Griggs. David, how are you tonight?
It doesn't span coast to coast like the Great West did, but doing fine. College basketball season comes slower than Christmas, so I mean you can't wait for the exhibition games to get here, and then once you get here, it just seems like the season is infinitely more further away. I haven't seen one exciting exhibition game yet. I did not watch the Iowa game. I realize they lost, but it's almost here. We're almost there.
Yeah, we are recording this Monday night. We are just 4 days away now from the 11 a.m. Eastern tip-off of Vermont, Eastern Michigan, and Keene College or Keene University against Columbia, both tipping off at 11 a.m. Friday morning to start the college basketball season. But our plan for tonight is to go through 23 conferences. We've got a lot to get to. This is kind of our under-the-radar preseason podcast, although under the radar technically means as we broadcast our under the radar shows through the season, any teams from these 23 conferences other than those that are in the top 25, Gonzaga and Wichita State, who we'll talk about tonight, are both top 25 teams. We will be discussing them tonight only, but they will not be under the radar again this season. On that note, though, we're going to start things off with probably the 3 biggest of these 23 conferences, the West Coast, the Missouri Valley, and Conference USA. And beginning things in the West Coast Conference, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Honestly, if you had told me 20 years ago that we would be talking about Gonzaga every year as a national power, top-rated team, I would have probably laughed at you. And I don't know anybody else in the country that, but I think everybody else in the country would have. But since Dan Munson took them to the Elite Eight in '99, then Mark Few came in and has never missed the NCAA tournament. Finally got him back to the Elite Eight last year for the first time since '99. Let me throw it over. Let me start with John here on this. How good is this Zags team this year? Is this a team that could contend for a Final Four spot or an Elite Eight spot again?
Certainly can. Last year, 35-3 overall, only 1 loss in conference, won the regular season title, won the conference tourney championship. You mentioned Coach Few. He doesn't have a history of getting to the Final Four, so obviously they need to do something to get over the hump. But the front court is spectacular. Tremik Karnowski in the middle, Montes Sabonis after a great freshman year, and newly named preseason All-American Kyle Wiltshire, who already has a ring from his time with Kentucky. He knows what it takes to win it all. So the front court is loaded. If the back court can bring it, this is a Final Four team.
And that's a great point. Let me bring it in Joby here. This front court, I think there's an argument made that this may be the best front court in the entire nation, and that's saying a lot with teams like North Carolina out there. But Joby, what do you think about this Zag front court here?
Well, I mean, we've already named the key component there. It's Wiltshire. And I do like John, not to sound like the chorus to his preacher, but the fact that there is a element there that has at least witnessed tourney success is a big deal, because the Zags for years have disappointed. I mean, they've been the darlings ever since they came up those 20 years ago, but they've never gotten close again. And I almost feel like it's institutional, whether it's Morrison's tears or what have you.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I had to go there. But the fact of the matter is, there is something there. I think this could be, if they can show the outside shooting consistently, that they're known for and typically get. If they can have that outside presence, they have the inside pretty secured. They could surprise. It would be a surprise after all these years of discipline.
Yeah, like I don't know. I've always been big on Gonzaga year after year after year, and I've always said like I mean I realize they're from the West Coast, but this is a top 5 caliber team, a Final Four caliber team, and I've been wrong for what did you say about 15 years in a row now? But here I am picking them again. I do think that once again, and I don't know why I keep getting fooled, that they are a Final Four caliber team. Now, they've had some bad luck in the NCAA tournament. The year they earned a number 1 ranking and earned a number 1 seed, they went out in the round of 32, and everybody, oh my God, see, we told you. Well, the team that beat them not only advanced to the Final Four, they went on to win 30-something games in a row the very next year after that with very much the same roster. Maybe that was a case of Wichita State being very good as opposed to Gonzaga being really bad. And they've had some other close calls, but that is kind of the black mark. When it comes to under-the-radar programs, Gonzaga is not one. They are an elite caliber program that plays in an under-the-radar conference. That's the only thing that's under the radar about them. But the difference between them and the very, very upper echelon of successful programs is they have never been to a Final Four. Do they get there this year? I don't know, but I think they're good enough to if the matchups fall right and if they stay healthy. They are very, very good.
Well, let's stick here in the West Coast Conference for a minute here. I think there's one other team here that deserves some serious consideration. This probably is not an under-the-radar program really either. I know we've debated this over the last few years since they moved to the West Coast, and that's BYU, every bracket builder's nightmare with the inability to play games on Sunday. But now Tyler Hawes is gone, but Kyle Collinsworth is back, and if there's somebody that could that's going to be among the elite players in this conference that's not on the Zags, it's definitely Collinsworth this year, I think. So let me throw it back over to John again. What do you think of this BYU team, and are they tournament worthy? Do you think?
Tourney, yes. Final Four, not so much.
Yeah, I'm not arguing Final Four for them. That's for certain.
For those of you who wanted to get some good odds, I believe BYU has played in the most tourneys all time without ever making the Final Four. 29 of them. Wow. So save your money. As far as Collinsworth, he is arguably the best all-around player in college basketball, which sounds crazy. The record, I believe, for a career is 6 triple-doubles. He did 6 last year by himself. He had 10 assists in the tourney loss to Ole Miss. He does it all. Obviously, the loss of Hawes, who's one of the greatest scorers in BYU history, is going to be huge. He does have some pieces around him, Kyle Davis and Chase Fisher. Dave Rose, limited tourney success. I think they'll make the tourney, but Collinsworth might have to put the team on his entire back by himself.
And I agree with you. And it's almost crazy with Wiltshire and everything that the Zags have that there's a chance Kyle Collinsworth could be the player of the year in the West Coast Conference as well.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, BYU, this is the best, even without Hawes, this is the best BYU team I think we've seen in a little while. They've been just missing or barely in. I think they're going to be solidly in. I'm willing to go on a limb on that. Fisher's a nice 1-2 punch.
No.
He's a nice 1-2 punch for Collinsworth. Sorry, it's going to be awful for our bracketing. But it is, I think they're a real team. And the key component to it is they have 3 LDS 20-year-old freshmen who are all thought of very highly. Emery, Hartsock, and Shaw. That could give some depth that they haven't had in quite a while. Yes, losing Hawes is a deal, but Collinsworth can more than make up with it. And like I said, Fisher's a solid second option.
David, let me throw it over to you here. As far as the rest of the West Coast Conference goes, is there a third team here that could sneak into bubble contention? I mean, it seems like St. Mary's is a team we discuss a lot. Do you think this year there's anybody else out there, or is it just a 2-team race?
I really don't. I think it is a 2-team race. I will say that this is we've talked about this and we've always said no. Should we I don't know if promote is the right word, but remove them from under the radar because it oftentimes is a multi-bid league now. But the thinking is once you get past BYU, Gonzaga, and St. Mary's, it looks very much like the WAC. Occasionally there's some other teams that are good. I don't see anyone being so good that they end up inside the bubble this year, in my opinion. But I don't know. We'll see. We're all starting off at 0.
Well, we are all starting off with 0, David, but let me stick with you for a second and turn to another conference, and that's the Missouri Valley, which is
Woo-hoo!
has the other top 25 team, maybe even top 10 team, depending on who you ask, heading into the season, and that's the Wichita State Shockers. What are your thoughts on this Wichita State team, and just how good do you think they will be?
I like them a lot. I think that it's kind of funny. If I were to look at Wichita State over the last 4 years, the team that made the Final Four probably comes in fourth on my list. I mean, I realize it was the same team that the very next year won all their games, but I thought that they were very good 4 years. I think that they're probably better than that Final Four team and probably better than last year. Now, how deep they'll go in the tournament, I don't know. But I like them a lot this year. I think they're going to run roughshod pretty much all over the Missouri Valley. And out of conference, I mean, they have a little bit of meat. I don't know if they have enough. They go to Tulsa, and they go to Tulsa.
Well, yeah, and that might have been one of their problems last year. They ended up with only a 7 seed, if you recall, although then they turned around and beat Kansas in the second rounds to kind of make their season. Let me throw John, this Wichita State team over to John here. I think if you combined the backcourt of Wichita State and that front court of Gonzaga, you'd have your national champion right there. And we haven't even touched a major conference team with these groups. But Van Vliet and Baker in the backcourt, maybe do you think that's are there any other better backcourts in the country? Or not very many, I would argue.
I think you're 100% right. I would argue that they are the best backcourt in the country. Van Vliet was the Conference Player of the Year in 2014. Baker had 20 points in 2014 in the 2-point loss to Kentucky in the tournament. He's led the conference in free throw percentage. They do it all. They're seniors, so they've been through it all. Like David said, this is arguably they've had several good teams in the past. The resumes are out there. Greg Marshall, a great coach. Conference Coach of the Year 2012 and 2013 and 2014. So he knows how to coach. The only competition last year was an amazing Northern Iowa team, but Coach Jacobson has lost a ton of guys from that team, namely Seth Tuttle, one of the best players in Northern Iowa history. Yeah. So I think this is the Shockers for the taking.
Wichita, they are also in what used to be what used to be the Old Spice Classic, which is now the Advocare. There, I missed that, but Xavier's there, Notre Dame's there, Dayton's there. There's some fairly decent programs. That is hugely important for the kind of seed they're going to get. When you look at Wichita's schedule over the years and you compare it to Gonzaga, the other the other under the radar powerhouse, so to speak. How is it Gonzaga seems to get enough? I mean, they have enough opponents on their schedule that by the end of the year, it's like they've played enough power teams to warrant the 2 seed, the 3 seed, the 1 seed. Why can't Wichita put that together? Is there a reason? And I'm asking that because I don't know. I don't think it's from a lack of trying, but they don't get the. They don't get the made-for-TV media games that Gonzaga seems to get.
Well, one problem could be that they have an in-state rival that refuses to play them, but that is something that they made up for last year's tournament, obviously. But let me just throw it out there. Last year with the Missouri Valley Conference, I made this argument when I posted my preview of the conference a few weeks back on the website. What they did overall as a conference last year in the postseason was maybe one of the best postseasons ever that nobody really noticed. You had Wichita State making the Sweet 16, knocking off Kansas on the way. You had Northern Iowa in as a 5 seed. Illinois State made the NIT and had a great run in the Missouri Valley Tournament. If you remember, they were up 16 on Northern Iowa in the championship game and completely fell apart. But on top of that, Evansville makes a CIT and wins it. Loyola makes a CBI and wins it. 14-3 overall between 5 teams in the postseason is pretty damn good.
And There's a lot of teams I like, and I know we're going to get to this, but I think we can see a couple teams on or in the bubble. I mean, Wichita State is, I'm thinking fringe protected seed. They're and they're so far inside the bubble that they're not even bubble. But I don't know. I think there's two teams in particular that I know you like, Chad.
Well, let me take it from there. We discussed when we were discussing Stanford having won the NIT. I think Joby, you brought this up that this was kind of the last hurrah for them last year, and it was not going to be. You didn't think it would be a springboard for them doing anything this year. Evansville and Loyola both winning postseason tournaments last year, both returning the majority of their rosters, including. Let me start with this Evansville team. DJ Ballantyne. If the best guard in the Missouri Valley Conference is not playing on Wichita State, it is DJ Ballantyne, and I really like this Evansville team this year. I picked them out last year, targeted this year particularly. I think they're a tournament team this year. Joby, do you have any thoughts on this Evansville team?
You kind of hit it. A team, there are two types of teams who win those postseason tournaments, not the NCAA. And it's, as you said, Stanford is the example of the type of team that it's the last straw. They have senior late and you're going for it. But then there's another type of team that you go, watch out, this could be the team that moves up. And Evansville's returning, 70, 80% of their scoring, I think, something like that. And
at least
you've got to pay attention. Yeah, you've got to pay
everybody
attention.
of note is back. I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. And so they have postseason success. They, whether it's the CIT, CBI, or another smaller tournament, winning in a tournament fashion has an effect long term when you make the NCAAs again. Can Evansville do it? Of course. This team is someone to watch. And I dare say, and this is I laid in the weeds on this one, Wichita State most certainly is in the bubble, but they're going to slip up a few times this year. The lack of out-of-conference, besides the Old Spice tournament, is going to catch up with them. And a team like Evansville could easily be that team, along with some of the others we're going to touch.
Well, let me turn over to John here. Both of this Evansville team and the other postseason champion from last year, Loyola Chicago. What do you think about both those teams heading into this season and their chances at upgrading their tournament?
Let's start with Evansville. I want to get the pronunciation right, so bear with me. Egidius Muscovicius. Thank you very much. As good as Ballantyne is, he was the MVP of the CIT. Muscovicius had 27 points, 12 boards, and 4 blocks in the title game win over NAU. Best thing to come out of Lithuania since the '92 Olympic team, I think. He's fantastic. He's a big guy in a small conference in terms of size and athleticism. Marty Simmons, a great coach. He played for Bob United Indiana. They know how to get it done. As far as Loyola, they have a great backcourt. Jeff White, Milton Doyle, Devin Turk, Earl Peterson. Peterson being the MVP of last year's CBI when they had the 1-point win over Louisiana Monroe. Front court a little lacking, so I think that Loyola could have trouble inside, which Evansville won't with the big man. Porter Moser, a solid coach for Loyola. He brings in his old buddy Steve Shields, who used to coach at Arkansas Little Rock. So I don't think they're all getting in the big tourney, but they all showed they can win in March, and I think that they'll all continue because they have some veteran depth with a lot of upperclassmen for both.
David, is there anybody else that you're looking at in the Missouri Valley beyond these three teams that we've already discussed? I know we discussed also Northern Iowa a bit that we think they're going to slip, but anybody else that you think may be in this conversation here?
Not as far as the big tournament goes. I really like Northern Iowa's program. I think they're not only at the bottom of the talent cycle now, but perhaps under the ground of it. I mean, they seem to go in stretches. They'll struggle this year. They'll be better next year, and then the year after that, Ben Jacobson will have them back if history repeats itself. But Evansville and Loyola was much improved last year. The one team I have more questions about than answers, it wouldn't surprise me if they were good, are our beloved Trees of Indiana State, the Sycamores. Really? What do you think of them? That good, huh? Anyway.
I'm not that sold on them. The other team I'd be keeping an eye on here is this Illinois State team.
Yeah. I forget.
We haven't mentioned them yet. John, let me throw back to you here. Illinois State does return your newcomer of the year in Akun Purcell, Nick Banyard coming in from New Mexico. Could they challenge, or are we just looking at a 1, maybe 2 bid league here in the Missouri Valley?
I think it's 2.
We're looking at a 1 or 2 bid. They have a pretty tough schedule. San Diego State, Maryland, Kentucky. I don't know what the heck Coach Dan Mueller is getting into with Illinois State. But going back to David, I kind of agree that Indiana State is a very, very quiet sleeper. Very manageable schedule. Butler is the only big team out of conference. They have a lot of veterans, Christian Smith and Devontae Brown in the wings. They bring in Matt Van Skyok as a transfer from Citadel. Greg Lansing, his coach, has been there 6 years now. Very quiet sleeper, probably won't do it, but they have a lot of nice pieces in place there.
Well, the sleeper that I'm actually looking at is probably a team that I'm looking at more for next year than this year because it's a roster made up of mostly sophomores and juniors. Keep an eye on this Drake team as we move forward. Probably not this year, but next year, I'm looking at them. I think that they're a team that's on the rise. Just want to throw that out there. But let me ask you, Joby, is there anybody else that you're looking at in this conference?
No, it's not the. I don't feel the normal ridiculous depth of the MVC is here.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn to one other conference that we want to hit on before we start running through everybody in alphabetical order, and that's Conference USA. And
I must say I'm a little surprised this made your cut, Chad, of teams to start off with at the top of the show.
Well, honestly, it did not make my original cut, and it was only because of some additional news that came out about CUSA this last night that made me want to bring it up here a little bit early. And that has to do with the team that I think is going to finish at the bottom of the standings, Southern Miss. Because not only are they going to be at the bottom of the standings, but no matter what, even if they make the incredible run in the USA could have made an incredible run in this USA tournament, they will not be in postseason play, as they have announced for the second consecutive year that they are banning themselves from postseason play due to the problems that happened under their last head coach. I'll put it that way. David, your thoughts on this announcement here by Southern Miss that they are again banning themselves to further punish themselves in anticipation of what might be coming down?
Well, it's kind of like me saying that I'm banning myself from winning the lottery this week. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Having said that, I am a little surprised. I am somewhat familiar with what happened there under Ronnie Tyndale. I didn't think it rose to the level of 2 postseason bans. So I was a little surprised that they decided to do it. I don't know if more came out that I didn't know about. I don't know if it was more serious than what I originally thought. But to do it for a second straight year, I don't think the NCAA would have levied sanctions to the point to where they would have had a second postseason ban. But then again, I don't know. I was not expecting it. I'll put it that way.
Well, let me throw this out here as we're going to try to get Joby back. I think we just lost him there, but let me throw it out there that when they announced their postseason ban last year, it was sometime into January or so. They were already, or maybe into early February. They were already at some record of like 5-20 at the time. I mean, they were pathetically bad at the time. Could their thought have been here, hey, the NCAA may not even count last year's postseason ban to help us because it was just so ridiculous how late we announced it and we knew we weren't going anywhere?
No, I maybe, perhaps. I don't know if the NCAA really thinks that way. I realize that several in the media would speculate that that's what it may have been, but I don't really think. No, to answer your question, I don't think that was their thought process.
Well, let's turn to the actual teams here in USA now, as opposed to the not quite actual teams.
The actual team.
The actual
the top looks like solid NIT, and the bottom looks like the Southland. Beautiful Conference USA.
Well, they have a new commissioner in the Conference USA, Judy McLeod, who wants to upgrade this, wants to be a consistent multi-bid league, wants to upgrade their television contracts and the like. We'll see what happens. I think they're actually in current negotiations for a new TV contract.
Yes.
But let me throw over here to Joby. I think we have back. We're going to start off with this Old Dominion team. So, Joby, given that it's Old Dominion, I thought we'd bring you in on them. What are your thoughts on this ODU team this year?
Love them.
You know what? This is why Jeff Jones is a good coach. I mean, he really is. I mean, he left Virginia not for being a bad coach, but for other
reasons. Yes. I think we lost Joby there.
Yeah,
But
David, if
which
you want
is
to finish,
the ghost of Jeff Jones? Those
You
other
got to give him
reasons.
that. But
uh,
but for the thing is, he's built on defense. He's built on teamwork. He does a dang good job of putting together a team that can beat teams that are more athletic than him. Old Dominion is a team I wouldn't want to touch in the NCAA tournament. And now they actually, because there's a very fertile recruiting ground in the 757, as it's often known, that part of Virginia, he has athletes, talent that can play his defensive style and do quite well.
well, so the question is this ODU team your pick to win the Conference USA this year?
Yes, without doubt.
Okay.
I think that they will play consistent. They should win the games they're supposed to, which means they should win close to all of them. It's going to be they're going to be very good. They're going to be in the tournament, probably as a late seed. They could.
All right, well, let me turn it over to John here. Do you agree with Joby first of all about the ODU pick, or is there somebody else that you may be looking at in Conference USA as well?
So if we go with the adage that defense wins championships, then ODU is the pick. They allowed about 57 points a game last year, which is the state of Virginia. That's like Virginia Cavalier territory. That's fantastic. They also had, I think, the quietest 27-win season I ever heard of. I mean, 27 wins.
Yeah.
And nobody was talking about them last year. They had a decent run in the CBI, made it to the semifinals before losing to Fresno State, and they bring back a lot of people. Heavy in the backcourt, obviously, Aaron Bacote, Dre Freeman, Ambrose Mosley, and they bring in small forward Denzel Taylor as a junior, so a lot of veteran leadership and a lot of, as you can see, those are the kinds of teams I like, veteran leadership and a bunch of different scorers, so you don't have to depend on one guy. They'll get a nice, tough out-of-conference schedule checkup with Purdue, Florida, and VCU. A lot of new coaches there, but still difficult.
They go to Rhodey. No, Rhodey comes to them. Like they got. That's the thing. Not to cut you off. They're gonna get their chances to make statement wins out of conference. So, continue, John. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's about it. I mean there were a lot of solid teams in the conference last year. There were 5 teams who won 12 conference games, and in addition to ODU, the other 4 were La Tech, UTEP, Western Kentucky, and UAB. But a lot of those schools lost some talent on the court. Some, like Louisiana Tech, lost their coach. They now bring in Eric Conkle, who is a former assistant at Miami. So I think the route for ODU looks good to go all the way to the title.
Well, so I guess what we're hearing here is that there's not much love on this panel for the UAB Blazers, other than maybe from me, because I like the combination of Robert Brown in the backcourt, William Lee down low, who I think has a chance to turn into a real star this year. But maybe I'm the only one that likes this UAB team.
Well, my thing about UAB is that I think they might have something this year. Do they have something to where they're inside the bubble? I don't know. I think some people, again, are overreacting to what was a very big win, but also a very uncharacteristic win in the NCAA tournament. Prior to that, they were 16-15. They did win the conference tournament, but they won it in Birmingham, and they struggled on the road. So, I mean, with all that, with the big contract extension, was it a little bit of an overreaction to one really good game as opposed to the whole body of work? Now, one of the things that's going to work against UAB this year is their schedule. It's not really full of chances to make statement wins. They open at Auburn, who may or may not be a tournament team, probably not, but they're going to be strong at home this year. And that's one of the more important games they play this year. That might be one of their more impressive wins outside of the games they play against Old Dominion. But, you know, Alabama State, Troy, Jack State, Illinois, Georgia State, who's down. They do go to Illinois State, Seattle, Upstate. I mean, this is just not full of the – they did not schedule accordingly, and they're in a situation where they could win 25 or 26 games, but 22 of them will have been against sub-NIT teams.
Well, let me just throw it on there real quick. Is there anybody else that anyone's looking at this conference as being able to be a sleeper that could get themselves into the tournament the conference regular season championship or even the at-large bid discussions from this league? Let me start with you, John. Anyone else you're looking at in CUSA?
I'm looking deep down the list, and I'm not seeing a lot. Maybe Western Kentucky, just because I think Ray Harper is an amazing coach. He's got Chris Harrison-Dox, who used to play at Butler and was the 2014 Conference Rookie of the Year. Big man Alexei Rostov, who missed a couple games last year due to the upper arm blood clot, but hopefully he can recover. And but no, I don't. I think it's a top-heavy conference, so I don't see any major sleepers.
Well, I'll tell you that there's two teams that I'm looking at. First of all is this Marshall team. I think that they have a chance here to if in D'Antoni's system, they may be able to start coming together here. May still be another year or so away, but I do like what he's building there in Marshall. And the other team that's a real deep sleeper for me is this North Texas team. Texas A&M, very deep sleepers. But keep an eye on J. Michael Reese here, who he was a very highly regarded recruit going into Texas A&M, transferred out of there, sat out last year. He has a chance to be a star here at North Texas, and don't be surprised if they pick up a couple of surprising wins during the season at least. With that, I think we're going to move on from Conference USA to the other 20 conferences that we have. And what the plan here is, we're just going to run through each conference one at a time. We're going to discuss, first of all, who we feel is going to win the league. And second, if that team does not get the automatic bid, if anybody feels that team may end up being at-large worthy. Obviously, if you think there's multiple at-large worthy teams in one of these leagues, let us know. There may only be one conference where we may seriously have that discussion. But let's start it off in the America East. And David, let me start with you. Who do you like in the AEC here?
The team that's been kind of running away with it, I still like Albany a lot. And I like them in the sense that they're 15 line-ish. So obviously, I have nobody else that's going to land inside the bubble. Stony Brook, again, you always kind of got to watch out for them. New Hampshire was a fun story last year, hosting, I believe, a conference tournament game for the first time in the state of New Hampshire. They're going to be much improved. I don't see them finishing at the top. But one of the things we love about this league is what, Chad? What makes this league so exciting now? That maybe it was less exciting before.
What makes it so exciting, of course, is the fact that Maine is in it. Oh, no. It's the fact that
besides Maine,
that the conference tournament is played on the home courts of the higher-seeded teams throughout the tournament, making some great atmospheres like we had in that home game by New Hampshire last year, one of the most exciting atmospheres we had during championship week last year in that game.
And it creates storylines for the regular season.
It does. There's a lot you're playing for. John, do you agree with him on this pick? I think we actually have a really interesting America East. There's up to 4 teams here. Also, Vermont to throw into the other ones David mentioned. But what do you think of this conference this year? Who do you have winning it?
I think it's Albany's conference to lose. They won their regular season and the conference tourney last year. They return a bunch of great seniors: Peter Hooley, Evan Singletary, Ray Sanders, and a coach, Will Brown, who's been there 15 years and has been to 5 NCAA tourneys. However, I really think you should not sleep on Stony Brook. A lot of veteran talent. Lucas Woodhouse in the backcourt with Carson Purifoy, and Jameel Warney, the 2-time defending conference player of the year. Steve Pikiel's been there 11 years on the sideline. So Albany's to lose, but Stony Brook is going to give them a run for their money.
Yeah, interesting. With Stony Brook, they also bring back Ahmad Walker, who played for them 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I believe, was a freshman standout. Then went and played at junior college, and now has come back to Stony Brook. So, but yeah, I'm actually looking for a real exciting race this year in the America East. As we move on to the Atlantic Sun, let me bring Joby in on this. Joby, your thoughts on the A Sun this season?
4 words: team of the people.
Oh boy, nothing says sunshine quite like the beautiful state of New Jersey.
But all kidding aside, NJIT. I mean, I love it. We all have said over and over again, it's awesome they found actually a pretty good under the radar conference to land in. I'm assuming North Florida is still the team to look at here, but it's nice to see NJIT with a landing just the same.
Uh, I actually like NGIT a lot this year
I do
with
too.
Damon Lynn and four starters back, four stars that all average in double digits back, nonetheless. But on the other hand, this North Florida team also has four stars back from an NCAA tournament team last year. David, I know you're a big fan of this conference, so I know you want to say something about it.
Yeah, I like it. It's really good. I think it's going to be a really exciting race once we get in the conference play between North Florida and NJIT. Gulf Coast, I think they're going to digress a bit. I mean, they've lost a lot of their talent, but they're still going to be a player. And I kind of like. I mean, Upstate's another team. I love their program. I think they've really made huge strides, but I don't think they're going to contend for the top of the league. But this is a fun league. And what's another thing we love about this league, Chad? A change they made 2 years ago. Great change. What is it?
They got rid of Northern Kentucky. Oh, no, that was this year. You're
Yeah.
talking again. They have the same thing. The conference tournament is played on the home courts of the higher seeded teams.
And how exciting has that been the last 2 years? The storylines that have been created in the regular season, both of the last 2 years, it's come down to the last day of the season to determine who the one seed would be. So it's been really exciting. I think it's enhanced the league, and I think it's helped get the best team into the tournament.
Well,
I like this league a lot.
let's keep moving. Let's move on to the Big Sky. John, let me bring you back in here. Is there somebody you're looking at the top of the Big Sky Conference this season?
So Eastern Washington and Montana were the regular season champs, and Eastern Washington was the tourney champ. So you certainly have to think that they're going to have a good chance to repeat. They bring in Austin McBroom, who transferred from St. Louis. They bring back Benke Joyce, who had 19 points in their loss to Georgetown in the tourney last year. Senior leader, arguably player of the year in the conference. It's Eastern Washington's to lose, but NAU had a great run in the CIT last year before losing to Evansville in the title game. So, and they bring back some guys, but I'll go with Eastern Washington to repeat, I think.
So you don't like this Weber State team then with Bollenboy and Jeremy Senglin. Um, that happens to be my pick this year. And again, it always seems to be a Weber State Montana battle in this conference. One of those two teams at the top almost every year. And that's just my thought on the league. David, you're kind of making noises over there about it.
They ruined it. They ruined it.
Okay, go ahead, David. What did this conference do wrong during the offseason?
Well, now we're at a predetermined site, and we have essentially taken what would have been an exciting run, as it was last year to determine home court advantage, and thrown that out the window. All winning the league does now is mean you get to wear white on someone else's home court. Horrible decision.
Well, the conference tournament is going to be played in Reno, Nevada this year. Is fairly neutral because there aren't any very close teams to Reno, but and all 12 teams will be in the conference tournament, which is a first for the Big Sky. But again, the home court advantage is now gone. Let's keep moving down here to the Big South. Let me throw this out there: the Big South. You've got one of the best under-the-radar players, maybe in the entire nation here in the Big South at High Point with John Brown. If you haven't seen him play, watch him play. He's exciting. He's fun to watch. And I think that this is the season he gets his Panthers into the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
David, you don't agree?
Well, I don't know. I mean, has High Point ever been? I was looking at somebody else, but I think Coastal will go with it again, even though they're not hosting the tournament anymore.
Yeah, but Joby, do you have any thoughts on the Big South here?
I kind of like Winthrop, kind of to throw a name out there. But, yeah, we'll see if Brown can be the one-man show at High Point.
Last year, again, we were into the second half of conference play, and we had, was it 7 teams separated by one game? It was amazing. It didn't mean anything, though.
It was a very close, but like you said, Coastal Carolina hosted it last year, and of course, then won it. Campbell will be hosting the conference tournament this season. They're probably a middle-of-the-pack team, so...
Have you been to Bowie's Creek? I mean, where are the teams going to be staying in tents? There's nothing there.
They got to make room for 11 schools there. Let's keep moving here. Let me turn back. Let me stick with you, Joby. Actually, you're on my screen right now as I'm looking at you. In the Big West Conference, What do you like out here? Is there somebody you're targeting?
Yeah, I think it'll be UC or Cal.
Yes,
Go easy
just
on
UC.
the ones that
that was perfect.
Wow.
UC
David, you
Irvine.
want to
Let's
fill
go with that.
the blanks there?
Even though the Gauchos, even though Long Beach State is playing their traditional, hellish run, which I always love and always respect. Irvine to go again.
I like UC Irvine as well. I mean, Long Beach State again. I mean, Dan Monson, he needs to step it up and play somebody good every once in a while. I mean, you can't just load up on cupcakes. The thing is, it actually isn't totally insane. I mean, I think he's swinging way over his weight. But say he were to win one or two of those games, and then get in the conference and go 16-2 or 17-1. The RPI would be so high they'd have no bad losses. They'd have a high schedule. I mean, if you look at it categorically, they would probably have a profile that the committee normally takes. It isn't totally crazy, but it's totally crazy. Wow.
Well, all five starters.
Let me say one thing. We were talking last, about Wichita State. Why can't they get the games Gonzaga does? Why can't they get the games that Long Beach State does? I mean,
yeah.
You can schedule it if you want to. That's the point.
Well, let me bring John back in here. Do you agree with this pick of Irvine with 7'6", 300-pound Mamadou Ndiaye in the middle there, or is there somebody else that you're looking at in this conference?
No, I feel strongly about Irvine. Their schedule is pretty tough. They could play Michigan State and Kansas. Talk about getting prepared for play in March. You have to remember this team lost by 2 points to a good Louisville team last year in the tourney, and that was with Mamadou missing like half the season because of a foot injury. Assuming he's healthy, he's got Alex Young, Luke Nelson, and Aaron Wright, a bunch of junior and senior guards. I think they can really handle this conference pretty easily, actually.
There's one other story I want to hit on in the Big West before we go on to the next conference, and that's Hawaii. Heading into the season last year, right at the eve of the season, Gib Arnold was terminated among all kinds of investigations that were going on. They brought Benji Taylor, who had been a former head coach at a few other places, in as an interim head coach for the whole season. Had an amazingly good season given the problems there. And David, after the season, Taylor was not retained. Instead, Aaron Ganoz takes over this year. I believe actually read that Benji Taylor, true story, is actually now working selling cars at an Audi dealership out in Hawaii. Any thoughts on why Hawaii made the coaching change?
Yeah, I do have a thought on this, and it makes sense when you stop and think about it. They're nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's my take. I don't. He did an amazing job considering the situation. I really think his players bought in, and you really felt like there was some momentum going. I think he deserved a chance. And it's not like you hired some all-world coach. I really would have liked to have seen him keep the position, but I don't know. I'm sure he's a good car salesman too.
Well, we'll see how Hawaii does this year, but let's move on to the Colonial. And let me start with Joe, because you're our Virginia guy. You are our Colonial expert, right? And there's a team from your state there that I think is going to be right among the tops here. Your thoughts on this team, and I don't think that we're talking about Elon or Towson. Who are we talking about?
No, JMU without doubt. Curry's a nice 1-2 punch in the backcourt, or nice thing to have in the backcourt, moving around. They have a reasonable schedule, not an amazing one, but that West Virginia game is going to mean everything for them. And here's the interesting thing components. The Colonial as a whole is at the top half, deeper than most of the under-the-radar conferences we're talking about.
I'd say
there's teams like Hofstra. Hofstra's good. William Mary's a solid team. If JMU can get out of that bubble, if you remember, there was like a 4-way tie. It was a crazy, much like we were talking about before, there was a crazy finish in this conference. If JMU can run the team, I'm not saying they'll get a defense at large, but maybe if they can do the double, get a win out of conference, and play Marshall twice, do well, they could get that 12, 13 seed as a conference champ, tournament champ combo.
Well, I think the one biggest problem a team like JMU may have here is you're looking at a Colonial this year where I think 7 or 8 teams have at least 4 starters back, or it is a very,
Yeah.
like you said, it's a very deep league, and that's going to make
Deeply.
picking up conference regular season wins really difficult.
Well, with that, I actually think that because of the depth, this conference is going to rack up a high percentage of out-of-conference wins, and as they get in to play each other, they're going to beat each other up, but I do think that there's going to be margin for error. I am really, really big on this league this year. I like Northeastern even more than James Madison. They also return 4 starters, and I think 6 of their top 7 or 8 players. This is a team that took Notre Dame to the wall last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if whoever it is that ends up, if someone breaks away and finishes first, we might see 1 or 2 teams inside the bubble. I like this league a lot this year.
Well, John, let me get your thoughts on the CAA this season, which David is now calling a multi-bid league.
Yes.
Of the 160 original Division I teams, 155 have made the tourney. The 5 who haven't: Northwestern, Army, St. Francis, New York, Citadel, and my pick to break that streak, William and Mary.
I like them too. I like them too. They have a lot. Yeah.
Tony Schaefer's been there over a decade. He's the winningest coach in school history. He played for some guy named Dean Smith. He's got Terry Tarpey, the defending conference defensive player of the year. He's got Omar Pruitt, the 2014 conference rookie of the year, who had a double-double last year in the NIT in the close loss to Tulsa. They got Daniel Dixon at the 2. A very tough schedule to prepare them. NC State, Dayton, and Virginia. William and Mary, come on. Come on, William and Mary.
Do you think they're going to there's more than one team that's going to make it, or is it just a one-bid league?
There could be a pair of 25-win teams. I mean, there's a lot of talent throughout the conference, but I think that because there are 7 contenders, they're all going to beat each other up. So I think that there's only going to be one surviving after that bloodbath of a conference schedule.
Well, so I'm the only one that's right about this. There's going to be at least 2.
Let's keep moving here, and
I love this league.
David, let me turn to one of your favorite leagues here, the Horizon. What are your thoughts on the Horizon League this season?
Well, my thoughts are they completely trashed one of the greatest formats. Like, it was campus sites and double bye. Now we're all going to Detroit because where else would you rather be in the month of March? I mean, yeah, but one of the things, I do think that there is a potential. I like this Valpo team. I had liked them all summer long. I was surprised to learn that there were many in the mainstream media even that liked them even more than I did. I don't think they're the best under the radar team. I think I still like Old Dominion more, but this is a really good team. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up inside the bubble. They do have some tests. They go to Oregon, Oregon State, Indiana State, who might not sound like a tournament team, but again, it's a team that I think will win a lot of home games. And if Valpo can go there and win, I think the committee will notice it. And they go to Belmont. So, I mean, if they can get 2 or 3 of those and then run away from the league and avoid stubbing their toes, because I don't think there's anybody else in this league that is anywhere close to Valpo. I'm not saying they're going to run the table, but they're good enough to where they shouldn't lose more than 1 or 2 games in conference.
Joby, you agree with him?
Yeah, I do. Green Bay's taking a step back. The question is, do we see a repeat of Conference USA, given that Oakland and Detroit are sitting? They're not bad teams, and they're going to be able to host the tournament essentially. So, there's going to be 500 Detroit fans just screaming in that arena.
Also, one other Nova on the Horizon, Northern Kentucky, who left the ASUN, has joined the Horizon this year.
Oh, yes.
And they will be, even though they're still not eligible for the NCAA tournament as a transitional team in their final year, they will be allowed to play in the Horizon League tournament. But let me move on to the Ivy League, and I wonder who should go to for this. John, what are your thoughts about this Ivy League here? And I think this is one of the cases where you and I actually are going to agree on our picks to win the conference this season.
So even if you're not an Ivy League basketball fan, you know that Harvard has been the cream of the crop the past several years under Coach Tommy Amaker. A big problem for them this year is injuries. Their senior point guard, Siani Chambers, who I would argue is one of the favorites for Conference Player of the Year. He had 13 points last year in their 2-point loss to the Tar Heels. He's led the conference in assists each of the past 2 years. However, he is out for the year with a torn ACL, which makes this a wide-open conference. As much as I would like to pick my beloved Penn Quakers, after recently learning that Tony Hicks decided to leave the team to focus on his academics, I don't think I can pick them. So I'm actually going to go with the Columbia Lions.
Wow.
Who have made the tournament, I think, approximately 0 times in my lifetime. They bring back 2 seniors who weren't helpful last year. One, Grant Mullins, missed last year due to a concussion. The other, Alex Rosenberg, had to withdraw from the school last fall. He broke his right foot, and the Ivy League does not have medical red shirts. So in order to preserve his eligibility, he literally had to withdraw from the school and then come back. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Kyle Smith, great coach. He was an assistant to Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. There's no track record to speak of, but I'm going to go with Columbia to win the Ivy League.
Well, yeah, and Columbia has not been in the NCAA tournament since 1968. I think the other team that's going to be right up there, and most people pick, is a team that's been in the tournament since 1962, and that's the Yale Bulldogs with the Ivy League Player of the Year, Justin Sears there. Joby, your thoughts on this on the Yale team?
That's my pick.
That's your pick.
I'm going with the favorite, and the favorite is not Tommy Amaker's team. The favorite really is Yale. You mentioned Sears. What we love about the Ivy is, hey, it's about who wins the regular season. There is no double, as we were referring to Valpo.
Wow.
I like Yale.
Yale lost last year in spectacular fashion. Wow. Anyway.
Yeah, the only other team that I'd throw out there that might be a contender, I think they're worth mentioning, is this Princeton team with all 5 starters back and a pretty deep roster, and only 1 senior on the roster. So keep an eye on the Tigers this year and next. And I think Tommy Amaker is going to keep things going at Harvard as well. Steve Donahue coming in to start rebuilding Penn. But let's move on to the Metro Atlantic.
Congrats to Steve Donahue on his step up from Boston College.
Major step up.
Major step up.
David, I believe it's now 2 years in a row, or 3 years in a row, that the Metro Atlantic Conference Tournament Championship game has been between the conference's 2 biggest rivals, Iona and Manhattan. What are your thoughts on this year's Metro Atlantic?
Well, I like Iona and I like Manhattan.
There you go.
I think those are 2 of the better teams again. This rivalry, it runs pretty hot. It's not, I mean, you can't say it's big on a national stage. Most people don't know where it is, but they're both New York City-based teams. When you look at your under-the-radar conferences, I think it probably is the biggest rivalry, or at least the most fun. I think they're both going to be right there again. Iona is extremely talented, and they're coached by our favorite, Tim Cluse. We love Tim Cluse mainly because he wins a lot, but when he loses, holy smokes, is it incredible. Losing in ways, they weren't that bad last year. I don't think there was a single game that they lost where they blew a 20-point lead in the second half. Very un-Iona-esque to not do that. And they also have a tendency to lose to really weak teams. But they did lose. Everybody was up in arms about Murray State last year not making the tournament. It wasn't fair. Maybe Iona should not have been in, but one of the things that no one noticed but us, Iona played a tougher schedule. Iona won more Division I games than Murray State. And the team that beat Iona in the conference championship game was a team that Iona had beaten twice during the season, and that was Manhattan. I thought Iona deserved more of a look than what Murray State got. They were good last year. You always kind of hate to see who you feel the most deserving team is not get in. I think they'll be good this year, but I do predict that there's going to be at least 1 or 2 games where they lose and you're like, holy hell, how did that happen?
Oh, yeah, and Iona has a great player there in A.J. English, probably the player of the year in the Metro Atlantic. My team to keep an eye on in the Metro Atlantic is Siena. They did lose 20 games last year, but they were wrecked by injuries. They should have everybody back healthy this year. Just a team to keep an eye on, but I do agree with you on Iona and Manhattan being right up there as well. Let me bring John back in here on the Mid-American Conference.
There's a team I love in this conference.
There's a team that I really like in this conference that plays a very lousy schedule this year. But John, what are your thoughts on the MAC this year?
So Buffalo was the East co-champ with Kent State last year. Central Michigan won the West, and then Buffalo ended up winning the conference tourney and making the title game. They obviously have to bring Nate Oates up to speed, which will help because he was an assistant to Bobby Hurley, and he's played some basketball in the past, but it's going to be tough to replace Hurley, and they lost a lot of players, including Justin Moss, who I believe was suspended or kicked off the team. So it's going to be a rough little year for Buffalo, but I want you guys to start. Who is your Big Mac team?
Central Michigan.
Team, I thought we were talking about McDonald's there for a second.
Yeah,
David, this Central Michigan team, coming back off of last year, very deep roster. Chris Fowler, John Simons, Rayshon Simmons. You like how much do you like them?
A lot. Enough to where I think that they could land inside the bubble, but their margin for error is almost zero. They're out of. I mean, the conference is strong enough to where if you get a couple big wins out of conference and then don't stub your toes in conference, because it's not easy to win in Akron, it's not easy to win at Kent, it's not easy to win at Western, and although those aren't regular tournament teams or high RPI teams, they are teams you're going to get a little bit of credit for if you go there and win on the road because they play so well at home. But when your toughest out-of-conference game, arguably, I mean, they go to BYU, they go to William and Mary, but other than that, they're playing Aquinas College, Lourdes. Let's see who else. McNeese State. That's always tough. They're playing 3-9 Div 4. What are you doing? It's just one of those things you want to pull your hair out. You know you're good. Why don't you give yourself a chance to prove it? Anyway,
with Central Michigan being the pick there in the MAC, let's keep moving. And John, let me get back at this because I dubbed this your conference at the top of the show, the MEAC there. Do you like your Howard Bison, or is it somebody else you're looking at here in the MEAC?
Man, I do not like my Howard Bison one bit. I suppose purely for geographic purposes, but I think they're going to have a rough little year. Last year in the MEAC, we had North Carolina Central winning the regular season and Hampton making the tourney after winning the conference title. Hampton brings back a bunch of guys. Quentin Chivas, son of the legendary Derek Chivas, one of the best scorers in Missouri history. Brian Darden in the backcourt, Reginald Johnson in the backcourt, a great coach in Ed Joyner, who coaches in his family and knows how to coach. They have to be the pick, I think, at least favorite-wise, and I'm not seeing a ton of sleepers, but interested to hear if you guys think otherwise.
The one sleeper I would keep an eye on is this Maryland Eastern Shore team. I love what Bobby Collins has done there, Conference Coach of the Year last season. Really, we started talking about this team mid-season, just the job that he was doing there, and I know they did lose Mike Myers, who scored 16 points a game last year, but I think they've got enough that they could challenge for the title if somebody else is going to do that this year.
I think Norfolk State could pop up out of nowhere. They always seem to. They've got a strong program. Actually, maybe as far as MEAC teams, the year-in, year-out component from Norfolk is I've always been impressed. Whereas you see your Hamptons sail up and down, there's more consistency in Norfolk.
David, let me bring you back in here for our next conference, the Northeast Conference. I know this is another conference that you really enjoy watching, I think. What are your thoughts on it this year, and do you have a pick for us?
It's hard to say as far as the pick. It's wide open. St. Francis Brooklyn is, who we're always kind of pulling for. They have the best arena in the country, bar none. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Like Robert Morris.
Yeah, I personally am kind of leaning towards this Robert Morris team this year, although St. Francis is one of the teams that John just listed for us a few minutes ago. Hasn't made the tournament yet, despite being in the NCAA since divisions began. I think that they've got a shot there, even though their best player is gone off of last season. Mount St. Mary's is the only other team that I'd look at as being a possible contender in this conference.
Yeah. It's a fun league. I mean, a lot of the schools, for the most part, they're smaller private schools. Not all, but a lot of them. And they play in these cracker boxes that just make for very intense, very fun atmospheres. And they do it right. The tournament's at campus sites. So,
well, a tournament that's not at campus sites, and maybe does not do it right, I guess. Although they do use the double bye system, at least at the Ohio Valley Conference. Big news out of it last year was Murray State not getting a bid despite almost having the perfect OVC season until the last few minutes of the championship game there. John, your thoughts on Murray or somebody else in the OVC this year?
My thoughts are whoever has to organize like the coaches gathering has their work cut out for them because there's 4 new coaches in the OVC. We got Matt McMahon at Murray State, Dan McHale at Eastern Kentucky, Rick Ray at Southeast Missouri State, and John Harris at SIU Edwardsville. If you guys can get all the coaches straight, then you deserve to win the championship. I think it's Belmont's to lose, but keep an eye on Austin Peay just because Chris Horton could lead the conference in several different categories as their big man.
David, I know you're a big OVC fan also. Do you agree that Belmont is the team here?
Yeah, I think Belmont is the team. And in fact, if you were to form an all-star team of the other 11, just all the best players, that maybe they would be almost as good as Belmont. I think Belmont will run away with it. I'm so big on Belmont, it wouldn't shock me if they were like 11-12 line-ish. I like them a lot.
So are we talking about a possible at-large bid if Belmont should do what Murray did last year and fall in the title game?
Yes. Well, if Belmont wins 28 games against their schedule, absolutely. They go to Marquette, to the Curtain of Distraction. They go to Evansville. They got Angry Frank on the schedule. They go to BYU, to Valpo. Yeah, I mean, whereas Murray played a bunch of sub-200 teams. If they win 28 games the way Murray did, I can't imagine them not being in it.
Joby, you have thoughts on the
Yeah, the schedule is pretty awesome. They will, if they win 28 games, we're not just talking about the quality win component that David was referring to. We're talking about an RPI because most of them are road games or even neutral site games. You're going to see a RPI that's tough to ignore. As much as we hit the RPI as a failed tool sometimes, if you have an RPI that's 19, you're in.
Let me move on to the next conference here. And John, we just mentioned it again that you brought up those 5 teams that have never made the NCAA. One of the teams you mentioned was Army. It's a little known fact here, actually, in the early I believe it was 1970, Army actually received an NCAA tournament invite. Head coach at the time, a guy by the name of Bobby Knight. Guard on the team at the time, a guy by the name of Mike Krzyzewski. They turned it down and went to the NIT instead. That shows you how much things have changed since those days. But Army has gotten an invite, but never actually played in the NCAA tournament. John, do you think this is the Black Knights' year, or is there somebody else you're looking at in the Patriot League?
It is not the year, although I want to give a little shout-out to their coach, Zach Spiker. His resume is pretty impressive. He worked for Steve Donahue at Cornell, John Beeline at West Virginia, and Greg Marshall at Winthrop. That's a pretty nice little resume. As far as the bid, I think that Lafayette has to be the pick. They were the conference tourney champ last year. Obviously, Bucknell won the regular season title. They'll replace their coach as Dave Paulson is out and Nathan Davis is in, who is assistant for Paulson at Bucknell. Lafayette returns not a ton of guys, but their most important guy, Nick Lindner, the conference tourney MVP. They got Fran O'Hanlon, who's been their coach for 20 years. So I think it's Lafayette to lose.
Well, this was another one of those complete parity leagues last year, David, where Army ended up as the 10 seed, and at one point I think they were on track to be about the 3 seed, and I think there was about 4 games separating maybe second from 10th place.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was really no one ran away with it, and they ended up beating each other up, and they were all destined for the 15-16 line because of it. But I don't know. And again, it's really tough to call this year. I mean, if I had to pick, it would be Lafayette, but it wouldn't. Americans, there's just a lot of good teams in this league that could win it. I think it's very close.
Well, Joby, let me bring you back in for our next conference, the Southern. Wofford has been the team to beat here for the last few years, although Chattanooga has been up there as well. Are those the 2 teams, or is there somebody else you're looking at here?
Yeah. I'm sorry to be boring. I think it's Wofford. I mean, Wofford's established a very strong program, consistent year in, year out. We actually discussed them in a fleeting moments for at-large status last year, if you remember. They were definitely in the discussion, though not ever really inside the bubble.
They didn't need it, as it turned out. But
yeah, and they didn't need it. Very good point, David. I think Wofford. I think Wofford again. If it ain't broke, why fix it? When picking out of that league.
Yeah.
John, let me bring you back in here for the next conference up, the Southland Conference, where Stephen F. Austin seems to every year be not only dominating this league, but in the at-large bid discussions if something does happen in the SLC tournament. Again, the same question I asked Joby for the Southern. Is it more of the same this year, or do we have something else going on?
No, Brad Underwood is the two-time defending conference coach of the year, and his conference record is ridiculous. I think he's lost like 0 or 1 games in his 2 years as coach. I mean, he literally owns the conference. They'll get a nice test against Baylor out of conference. They bring back Thomas Walkup, who had 12 points in their loss to Utah in the tourney last year. The thing you should keep an eye on, though, if you like offense, is Northwestern State. They could have co-players of the year, despite Walkup being great. Jalen West had 34 points and 10 boards in the CIT last year, 10 boards as the point guard, and Zeke Woodley was Conference Rookie of the Year in 2014, an amazing backcourt for Northwestern State.
Yeah, this it'd be nice if they could play a little bit of defense there, though. But
getting back to SFA real quick, this schedule is, I mean, in December, from December 8th to December 19th, I mean, we have got a gauntlet of games here. All 3 games are at home. They have Henderson State, Arkansas Tech, and one of my favorite, Lady of the Lake. Again, we are under the radar, guys. Chad and I, we love these. We love these programs. We try and give them attention. We are intrigued by them. This is just, is someone that's a fan of this level of basketball, you see a team like SFA that is legitimately good, and then you look at their schedule and you want to pull their hair out, because all that they can really seemingly do from year to year is prove they can beat sub-200 teams. They do go to Baylor. They open the season at Baylor. It's a hugely important game, especially because there's really nobody else on their schedule. I just don't understand it. And they say, Brad Underwood, that they can't get anybody to play them. Well, yes, you can.
We could go out and play some of the teams that we discussed already. Wichita State, wouldn't you like to have a 26-4 team as part of your RPI? I mean,
it's just kind of infuriating. And then you look at other teams that say they can't get anybody to play them, and everybody has Division II teams on their schedule, and they're not playing each other. I don't. This team has if they don't win that game against Baylor, they better not lose another one. Wow.
Let me go back to John here and move over to the Summit League, where South Dakota State, I think, has one of the best mid-major backcourts out there with Parks, Marshall, and Biddle. They did lose in the championship game by a point to North Dakota State last year. Do you think that this is the year for the Jackrabbits?
It's tough. I think both of them, it's a coin flip, I think. They're both great teams with great coaches. South Dakota State has Scott Nagy, who's been there over 2 decades now, and North Dakota State has David Richmond, who's only in his 2nd year, but was Conference Coach of the Year as a rookie last year. I need to give a shout-out to South Dakota State for the scheduling. They could end up playing Utah and Cal and West Virginia and Kansas. That, my friends, is a mid to low major non-conference schedule.
Yeah, and if they win 1 or 2 of them, they're in great shape.
If they win one of those, they're probably in great shape. But David, anyone else, you looking at this conference, or is it the Battle of the Dakotas again?
The Battle of the Dakotas. I like North Dakota State a lot as well. They won the conference last year. They returned just about everybody.
Lawrence Alexander was Conference Player of the Year, and he's not back. But
he's not? Okay. Well, they returned just about everybody. I think it's going to come down to those 2 again, and that's shaped up to a pretty fun rivalry in recent years. The North Dakota State South Dakota State game.
Joby, let me turn to you now. Probably maybe the best moment of last year's NCAA tournament was the Ron Hunter falling out of his chair,
Yes.
breaking his foot in the victory. Um, Georgia State, obviously R.J. Hunter and Ryan Howard are both
Yeah.
gone, although Kevin Ware, who has a NCAA championship to his
Yes, he
credit,
does. Yeah.
is back. What are your thoughts on the Sun Belt here?
I think Georgia State lost too much.
Mhm.
Too much of their structure to make a run again. I'm partial to Louisiana Lafayette right now, but ULL. But it's one of those. It's a shame because I feel like people graduate from the Sun Belt, and it's not like the good old days when Western Kentucky would win it every year. It seemed like in some strange way, or et cetera. It's just not the same. Georgia State should be in the Colonial.
They were in the Colonial.
I know, that's my point. That's my point.
That
Like,
Lafayette
it's
pick,
the
though.
same. I hate it.
Yeah,
Realignment. Joke it. Yeah.
Sean Long there for the Raging Cajuns is a double-double machine, maybe the best player in the conference. The other team I like is actually the other Louisiana school, Louisiana Monroe, who were your runner-up in the CBI last year, and I think those may be the two teams this season.
I think they will be, and I think they're going to kind of run away from the league a little bit, and it's going to be fun watching them go at it because it is sort of a lower-level rivalry.
It actually is when you go to the football side, it's actually a big-time rivalry. These two.
Well, when I mean lower level, yeah.
But LSU gets all the attention, rightfully so, in football and basketball in the state. But these two really fight it out in terms of who can be the biggest of little brothers.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking about the words lower level, I think it's a good segue to the SWAC. Let me turn to you, John. Who do you think is going to be battling for the spot in Dayton this year? And I don't mean the 11 versus 11 game.
So Texas Southern won the regular season and the conference tourney last year, and then they made it and went down to my Arizona Wildcats in the tourney. They bring back a lot of guys. Devereaux Biggs, Jose Rodriguez. Jose missed last season with a knee injury, but he was good the year before, and now he's back and hopefully healthy. And, of course, Mike Davis, the defending conference coach of the year. He coached at some school called UAB. He was in a runner-up at Indiana back in the day. It's his conference to lose, and he brings back enough that he should be able to do it.
Well, I'd agree with you. I think they do have the best head coach in the conference. All the fun we've had with Mike Davis over the years aside.
Yeah.
This year, I am kind of looking at this Alabama A&M team, though, 6 seniors, including all 5 starters back. But, David, your thoughts on one of our favorite, more or less, conferences here?
It's alarmingly bad. I mean, it is not uncommon for this league to win fewer than 10 out-of-conference games total. It is shockingly awful. It isn't that it's the worst league. It's the worst league by such a large margin. I don't remember the last time. I want to say it was in the 90s. Alcorn State ended up on the 15 line. And I guess like last year, did Texas Southern get a 15?
Texas Southern.
They were 15. They were 15.
That was the first time in seemingly 15 years that this conference had landed on a seed better than 16th. I don't know. You just wonder, and there's a lot of tradition in this conference on the football side of things. These are some proud universities. You wonder why the basketball is so bad, but it is.
Yeah, out of the 10 teams in the conference, 6 of them lost 20 or more games last year. That is just.
And how many are under APR? Have APR issues?
Actually, this year it's a pretty good year. This year, there's only one team, I believe it's Alabama State, that is on the postseason ban list. So 9 out of 10 are eligible.
Southern's back, or is Southern all the way back?
Southern is back. Southern has been cleared for postseason play after their 2-year hiatus there with their own issues. So we have 9 out of 10 eligible this year, which is one of the best we've seen in the SWAC in quite some time here. One last conference left. David, your conference, the Western Athletic Conference. And I'm going to go out a little bit of a limb here because I'm going to pick somebody to win the conference that I'm not going to pick to be in the NCAA tournament.
Well, we're going to pick the same team, and I think they are the best team, but they're not eligible.
Right.
It's remarkable. It has happened, believe it or not. Birmingham Southern, as a transitional team, finished first in the Big South. Unfortunately, they reclassified down to Div 3 after doing it and never played. But this is a bit of an oddity, and they're a candidate because of this. It's that much of an oddity. Can a transitional team finish first, and that's Grand Canyon? I think they will. I think they're the best team out there. Now, that's not saying much. It's the WAC. But I do think they're the best team in the league.
Well, John, let me bring you back in here on Thunder Dan's team. Do you like them to win the league also, or are you going somewhere else?
I'm a big Thunder Dan fan, so it's hard to pick against them, especially playing in my state where I grew up of Arizona with the Antelopes. But I think that New Mexico State is just too good. I mean, Marvin Menzies has been in the conference for 9 years, defending Conference Coach of the Year. He's been to 5 tourneys in 9 years. The other 8 coaches combined have been to 2 tourneys. He literally owns the conference.
Yeah, and I think we may all agree that New Mexico State is going to be our pick to be in the NCAA tournament out of this league. It just maybe not win the regular season. Joby, would you agree with that?
I agree with that, and I mean, New Mexico State's definitely the. Actually, they probably are the favorite, as John T. Described on the court, even ahead of Grand Canyon. But, and maybe I'm being premature in this, there is a reason why I have been advocating for Grand Canyon to be the team of the people this year.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a few here. I just want to throw one other thing out there about the WAC.
It's such a segue. Come on.
But David, we have a new team in the WAC also. If we want to talk about potential teams of the people for this season,
it's Texas Rio Grande Valley, correct?
Yes.
This was the school.
Grand Valley.
Last year we had Texas Pan American here. They merged campuses with Texas Brownville, which I believe was an NAIA program, to create Texas Rio Grande Valley. There is no transitional period needed. They are basically taking over Pan American's spot in Division I, though. Before we get to, Joby did mention the team of the people. We segued a little bit there, but David, one thing that we like to do each week in our Under the Radar podcast is give our Under the Radar top 10 list, our top 10 Under the Radar teams. Obviously, Gonzaga and Wichita State will not qualify for this list, nor will BYU, but I believe you've come up with our preseason top 10 list.
Yeah, and again, you all are going to disagree, and we've already talked at length about a lot of these, so we're not going to spend too much time. Old Dominion, I like them a lot. I think they got the schedule. I could see them way inside the bubble, and I think that they're the best under-the-radar team, meaning outside of the multi-bid line and outside of the top 25. A team I like more than just about everybody else in the country right now, I have Northeastern at number 2. It wouldn't shock me if they landed inside the bubble. I realize that you mentioned the Colonial was kind of rough, but I actually think that gives them the chances that they might need, especially if they can pull away. I have Valpo at number 3. I think that I don't see them losing any more than 2 conference games, if that. James Madison, the team that you picked to win the Colonial, I have them at 4. Central Michigan, their schedule host is a corporate sponsor as Hostess. That's going to work against them, but we're starting them out at number 5. SFA, whose schedule is even more ridiculous, I have them at number 6. Evansville at 7. We talked about them possibly landing inside the bubble. Belmont 8. Loyola Chicago at 9. And a team that you like more than I do, UAB, I have them at number 10. Again, thoughts on those teams? I know we talked about them a lot already, but
we have to talk about a lot. The one thing I really think you have the 2 Missouri Valley Conference teams way underrated on that list. I'd probably have them up there 2 and 3, or 1, 2, and 3 with Old Dominion.
Yeah, I like Old Dominion though.
And I'm still, we discussed during the Colonial. I'm more in the James Madison camp. I think they have a chance to break out, and I know John T. William and Mary is a honorable mention.
They would have been number 11, by the way. I like them a lot. So
now let's get back to where Joby was bringing us. Sorry, Joby, we got a little off track there. But our last topic for the night, as as we did last year, a tradition that we've been doing since the 2014-15 season. Every year we adopt a team of the people here. But last year, NJIT was our adopted team, and what an amazing story it was with the win at Michigan, the run in the CIT all the way to the semifinals. We need to choose our new team. We want to just throw a few suggestions out there tonight. When we come back with our final preseason podcast in a couple nights, we'll announce our selection.
And essentially, it's got to be a team that's below the sightline, under the radar, and they have to have a exceptionally unique story. We've got a couple nominations. Starting with last year's team, I still like them in JIT.
NJIT is down on the nomination board. I will throw out a team here. The new team in Division I, Texas Rio Grande Valley. Just an interesting story is that they're kind of a new team, but going right ahead into being a NCAA, taking over Texas Pan American spot. John, do you have a nominee for this year's Team of the People? Somebody that you like among these teams that has an intriguing story?
I'll go with Brown. I don't know if the intrigue level rises to the others, but they have Cedric Kwakamansa, who's arguably the greatest shot blocker in Ivy League history. They had Justin Massey transferred from Florida Atlantic to play with his twin brother Jason, and they have Jordan Spieth's younger brother Steven Spieth.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of nice intrigue there.
That's interesting.
And Joby, I'm going to turn it over to you to announce our final candidate. You've already kind of previewed it a bit, but I think it definitely belongs on the list.
Baby. And one thing at Grand Canyon is that one thing that's interesting is I think a component you should add to it is because we had so much fun with NJIT in Michigan. All right, are there chances for this under the radar team to make a spark? Well, let me give you Louisville. Yeah, so the Grand Canyon's going to be visiting the Yum Center on December 5th. That should be a lot of fun. They also go out to San Diego to play San Diego State and host Central Michigan. That awful schedule, Central Michigan actually comes to Grand Canyon.
Right, and really have a great arena there too in Grand Canyon, and they were absolutely packed the other night for an exhibition game.
It was ridiculous. It was unbelievable.
And so I'm kind of leaning towards being with Joby here. Again, a final decision will be made in a couple of nights here, but this Grand Canyon team. They are eligible for the CIT. In fact, they've been in it each of the last 2 seasons. They could go for their 3rd straight CIT bid this year. But all I got to say is lopes up as to them. And let me throw it out there for any final thoughts, beginning with you, David.
I still like NJIT. I know that we did it last year with them. I think that they would be. I think the reason that we're not considering them as strongly is because they were the team of the people last year. But I don't know, Grand Canyon, it's pretty compelling.
Well, let's go. Joby, any final thoughts as to anything we've discussed tonight?
Wow, Joby.
I guess not.
How
about you, John? Any final thoughts regarding our under the radar teams?
I'm not opposed to Grand Canyon. They had a nice schedule last year with their CIT game against Northern Arizona University. It's probably the closest commute of anyone. And they have Ryan Marley, Dan's nephew, who transferred from Toledo just to play for him. It's a very nice story.
Then with that, I think we'll give one last lopes up here, and I think I got the symbol right there. And thank everybody for joining us, and we'll be back again in a couple nights with our final preseason podcast. And again, games start Friday, 11 a.m. Take care, everyone.